Welcome to ConstructTech TV. I'm your host, Peggy Smedley. And if you know, all across the world, cities are becoming test beds to the development of new technology in such areas like building and physical infrastructure. We talk about water and sanitation. Think about energy management. What about connectivity and mobility? In order to facilitate this, builders, as contractors, subs, government, tech companies, and even all the citizens, we all need to come together to help make smart cities a reality. So this is what we're going to be talking about all year long on this show. We're going to kind of blur the lines between cities and infrastructures of tomorrow with what we call the construction of today. So we are going to put into focus all these technologies and all the advancements that drive the industries and will have the greatest impact on everything we talk about. So today, industry insiders are going to give you a glimpse into what is a connected city, the type of technology needed to make all of this a reality, how building automation factors into all of this that we're talking about, how even augmented reality is changing how cities are being built, and how physical assets are tracking all of the equipment that you have to help build smart cities. Now, we will address challenges, I think even the solutions, and what's coming in the future. It's time to start building smart cities, and it starts today. I'm here with Alison Mitchell of Sensor City, and you are the executive director. And we've talked to you before, Alison, about all the amazing things that are happening in this connected city. Let's talk now about the technology, because a lot's advanced, and we're seeing a lot of companies really getting excited about it. What's your thoughts right now that's making it a reality?
I think all the technology is there, Peggy. And really, it's about people coming up with the ideas and ways of using the technology. So certainly we have the sensors are available, the electronics are there and quite mature, the networks are there, both in terms of low power networks like LoRaWAN networks and 5G networks, and obviously fiber connections. And of course, now we know how to use data and we know how to represent it well on apps so that people can easily access that data and choose which bits of data they use, turning it from data into information and then into something that really adds value to their business.
So we have to kind of put all these things together. Are we having to build it together? This is the kind of thing that we talked about. There can't be all these islands of things. Everything has to kind of come together. Is that what we're starting to discover?
Yeah, yes, very much. And particularly in the city market, what you need is cities themselves you can think of as platforms. They are lots of points of data with sensors all over the place and people carrying mobile phones that are sensor related and cars that are sensor related. They're pretty much everywhere and producing masses and masses of data. And if you've got somebody who really wants to make the most of that data and to turn it into information and into insight, then they can drive a project forward and really make a massive difference to their city, to make it a smart city.
Are these sensors really giving real-time information now about things that we didn't know? We talk about roads and bridges and they're crumbling, and we're getting information to really, in some cases, save lives so we don't have a bridge that's collapsing, and now we can have bridges protected or worked on before it collapses.
Absolutely, Peggy. You can have sensors that measure pretty much anything. So humidity, moisture, vibration, and you can be understanding the tolerance levels. We're learning all the time where there are problems. And those sensors are so small now. The housing can be very robust, can work in very difficult environments, and they can be sending that information back. No need to go out and inspect bridges directly. You can have that information be sent to you as a company, and you can really save on the manpower and make sure that you are being alerted to things remotely.
How are different public and private partnerships working together on this? Because you have to think about these sensors in these community, as you talk about as the sensor city. Everybody's kind of working together and giving information. How is that really happening now? Because before we were still kind of not making it happen, but now we have to make it happen.
I think we do have to make it happen, and it is very much, as you say, it's about a public and private partnership. If somebody in a city is a very complex beast rather, and it has lots of stakeholders involved, and all of those stakeholders have to come together. So it might be the construction companies, it could be the transport companies, it could be the people who are owning the hospitals, who are trying to keep people out of hospital. And of course, it's the individuals who live in the city as well, because they need to know that their data is being protected, their security is being protected, and they need to know that they are being safely looked after.
Are we having to build a lot of things now when we talk about these connected cities? Because we're talking about autonomous vehicles, we're talking about connected traffic lights, we're talking about distribution. Are there a lot of things that happen? I mean, are we talking about things that are going to happen today? Are we talking 10 years, 20 years, 30 years out? How is it all going to happen?
Things are happening now. So the examples you gave there, traffic lights certainly happening now. And those traffic lights are connected, they're working intelligently. Then it's easy then, if you've got the right platforms in place, to add in, making them all turn green when an emergency vehicle comes through. Some cities have intelligent buses so that they are going on the optimized routes. And of course, we're all using things like Google Maps now, where we are having our journeys optimized. So if they see that all the mobile phones have stopped in a particular area, they know that there's maybe been a traffic accident, and will divert you automatically around that. So we're already using these in many, many different ways. And I think it is just about that, finding all the new use cases that as we have that data, how do we use it intelligently?
Well, Alison Mitchell, thank you as the Executive Director for Sensor City. Thank you for spending time with us today.
It was a pleasure, Peggy. Thank you very much.
All right. Well, you see, the city is becoming more connected, and so are all of us. So we'll continue to see so much more happening in the years ahead. We appreciate all your time. Today I'm with Austin Conti. He is the CEO and co-founder of Tenna. Austin, welcome to the show.
Thanks for having me.
So Austin, let's talk about the construction industry. You've been in the industry for a long time. You understand the space. And now one of the big things that contractors really need to understand is tracking their assets. Why is it so important right now when we think about all the things that are happening in a connected city?
I would say, again, my background's been in construction. I've been working on construction jobs my entire career. And a key component in building any infrastructure is knowing where your materials are, where your equipment is, and also the people on the job site. And it's so important to know where these pieces are at the right time to make sure the projects are done on schedule, done at a lower cost, and done in a more efficiently way. So from understanding, knowing where they are, and also the preventative maintenance is really powerful for the job sites.
And you think about that on a lot of projects. We've talked about this, you and I, in the past, is that contractors sometimes don't know where their assets are, and that can be very costly and time-consuming, and the efficiency of not knowing this can be troublesome if you think about a project overall.
Yeah, definitely. And, contractors are hardworking men and women, and, these projects are complex. They have assets moving around all the time, and, just knowing where everything is very important to make sure the jobs get done in an efficient manner. And it's not necessarily just the large yellow iron, your cranes, your backhoes, your bulldozers. It's also all the small assets. And what we think is very important is to be able to track all the assets, regardless of the size and value, on your job sites across a company.
And that's funny because sometimes people get lost in that idea of thinking it's got to be the big assets. It's the small assets that you lose all the time that are sometimes the most time-consuming and the most costly, because those are the ones you're searching for.
Yeah, definitely. Everybody knows they have a Connex box full of stuff, and that stuff is very important. So again, knowing where the walk-behind compactors are, your pumps, is just as important and can be critical to a job as much as your D6 dozer.
Let's talk about, in general, the technology. Why is this technology so important? What's the biggest benefit behind all this technology today that we're seeing? Because I think we're talking about prices coming down, the efficiency, how you can link it to other solutions that we have. I mean, there's a lot of benefits that we didn't have years ago.
Yeah, definitely. I think there's innovation happening in 3 levels. One is from the network carrier side. So the introduction of CATM1 systems, LoRa networks is enabling the hardware to connect to the engines of the heavy equipment in a much more cost-effective manner. It also doesn't drain the battery life of the machines, which is very important. Secondly, the enabling all of the cell phones that you have on job sites is an innovation. So you don't have to buy a piece of hardware for everything. You're enabling the innovation and hardware that's already been on the project sites. And thirdly, just cloud computing. So by connecting all of the IoT sensors to these new networks, it's very powerful and allows you to gain more information about your assets than you couldn't before.
When they have this information now that they didn't have before, is this allowing them to be more competitive or being able to do more jobs when we think about these smart cities now because they have information about their assets?
Yes, I think it's making the entire industry more competitive, which is better for smart infrastructure in general. So if you're constructing projects in a more efficient manner, that's better for the market. More projects get done, and then smart cities can actually be enabled from building the city smart from constructing them as a contractor, and also then building in the IoT sensors within the city in general. So I believe it across the board from a construction side and then also an end product infrastructure side, it's very powerful.
Are we seeing enough construction companies leveraging, tracking their assets like they should, or we still have a long way for them to understand that there's a lot of benefit here in what, like you guys are doing at Tenna?
Yeah. I think it's, that's a good question. I think contractors, are great inventors, and that everyone knows they should be doing tracking. It's something that's happening in the market, but not everyone has a solution yet. So it's not a period where I feel people don't know the benefits of preventative maintenance and knowing where their assets are, but not everyone has put a system in yet. So we're seeing kind of a turn in the tide where the benefits are known, but the technology and solutions are now being provided.
Do you think we'll see more rapid adoption as this technology continues to grow and people start seeing there's a real ROI here?
I think in the next, year to 3 years, 90% of contractors will have a telematics system, will have an asset management platform, will have preventative maintenance in their company.
Well, Austin Conti of Tenna, thank you for being with us. We appreciate you spending all this time today.
Thank you. Really appreciate it.
All right, well, that's all the time we have for now. Stick around. We've got a lot more to come right here on Construct Tech TV. I'm pleased to introduce Brian Ballard, who's the CEO and co-founder of Upskill. Brian, welcome to the show.
Thank you very much, Peggy. I'm happy to be on.
Brian, let's talk about what's happening right now, looking at augmented reality. Everybody calls it AR these days, and it's really changing. It actually started a lot where we used it in manufacturing, and we saw it on the factory floor. But now we're seeing a lot of it being used in construction. And we're talking about how it can be evolving with what we see in smart cities and how construction can really use it on the job site for actually how they're actually using it and where we advance in what we're talking about these smart cities. Talk a little bit about how you see it evolving.
We definitely see construction as an obvious spot for the technology to be adopted pretty quickly. And when we look at the problems that can be solved by augmented reality, we're looking at in terms of if we give people an understanding of what they're doing, what they're trying to accomplish, how something could look, the visual impact of augmented reality is a game changer. You can almost think of it as a GPS for your job. If you know what it should look like in the finished state while being able to visualize it in a real world environment, it has a real impact, I think, on people's understanding of what's next, where does something go. You can have real-time insights into your supply chain. These are the things that are driving, I think, a more intelligent, connected workforce of the future. And AR is a very big component of that.
Are we just talking about the software side of things? Because I'm looking at what's next to you. Or are we really talking about the hardware? And is that really what construction companies need to understand the benefit of these tools?
Yeah. So from an imagination standpoint, I think for decades we've envisioned, like, whether it's the Geordie LaForge style hardware of showing you different spectrums or information, down to the heads-up displays that you might have had in like a fighter jet. The idea of adding valuable information certainly is a software powered experience, but the hardware is a very important part of the evolution of the marketplace. when you think about the construction industry, you have indoor and outdoor operations, you work all year round, different types of weather conditions. Hardware has to be to a certain level of maturity for it to even be viable, regardless of the software that comes in. Because there's such I think, a very clear opportunity to take the software that exists, whether it's an AutoCAD design or some of the drafting tools that are out there, and then display that to the user. It's created a pull function to make the hardware vendors design for that user experience. And some of the devices behind me, for instance, the Microsoft HoloLens, the RealWear HMT1, they're designed with an industry user in mind, whether it's supporting hard hat capabilities, the ruggedization of the environment, or the immersive visualizations you need. There's tools out there now for the different roles.
Are we talking about, because when we first looked at AR and we thought about these tools, we just said they were priced outrageously. Are we coming down so that construction companies can say not only are they affordable, but they're effective and efficient for doing things at the job site, and when you're actually in the field, in a building, things that you think about that you say, I can actually use this not only for what I'm doing at a job site or in a building, but actually much more, the things I haven't even thought about yet?
Yeah, it's interesting. Like if you go to even a Home Depot, you'll see consumer grade tools and you'll see professional grade tools. Some of even those professional grade tools that have been in industry for decades are more expensive than augmented reality hardware and software today. Not always, but it's certainly something where you think about the impact something makes in a professional environment. You don't look in terms of what's the cost, you look at in terms of what's the return on that investment. And the ROI right now, I think, is driving adoption. Now, most augmented reality today is used in a warehouse, in a factory, out on a site for repair. In those roles where there's more data out there, we see payback in a couple months. What we don't have data yet, I think, at a scale that matters is where is it in every industry? But we continually see this fast payback of ROI. So if you go back to the original question you asked me, the hardware is approaching a price point that is a no-brainer for driving ROI.
Is there what in your mind is the biggest benefit of using AR right now for a construction company that they say that ROI is coming, but here's the biggest benefit you see today?
First-time quality, I think. If you have an awareness of what should be done, you do it right the first time more often. The old adage, measure twice, cut once. I think this increases the odds of getting it right the first time.
How quickly now are you seeing companies take advantage of this? Are we going to see it right away? Is it going to see they start using it and they go, wow, I can do this with it, and there's so much more I can do with it?
In the more established industries, we're seeing it come very, very quickly. So manufacturing, so think of like discrete manufacturing, whether it's aerospace, automotive, heavy industry, you're producing high capital cost goods, very quick adoption. In the supply chain for material handling, we're seeing very quick adoption. In the construction space, some of the pieces that needed to kind of come together at the same time are starting to converge now. And I think we're going to start seeing the adoption go through kind of its natural cycle, where you've got the early adopters that have digitized data. So your Autodesk-based construction companies can take that design side and get it to the field force very quickly. Construction companies that have not invested in digitization of the design side, I think, will be laggards in that adoption curve.
So looking at this right now, how many construction sites can you envision you're going to see all these folks wearing these glasses? You go to a traditional construction site and you say, this is going to be all digitized and everyone's going to be wearing AR glasses in the future.
Oh, man. When we get to the everyone category, I think we're talking 2025 and later, but I think you're going to see some companies have very high density, augmented intelligence, augmented reality, equipped workforces within the next 18 months.
Brian Ballard from Upskill, thank you for spending time with us today at Construct Tech TV. We really appreciate it.
You're welcome. Thanks for having me.
All right. Well, you can see AR is going to be right at the construction job site and so much more. So we've got more to tell you what's going to happen not only at construction job sites, but right in our smart cities and everything else that you're going to do. So stick around. We've got more to talk about. here with Scott Smith, who is the Enterprise Program Manager and Industry Principal at OSIsoft. Scott, welcome to the show.
Thank you, Peggy. Glad to be here.
So, Scott, let's talk a little bit about the building energy kind of efficiency side of things when we talk about smart cities. There's been a lot of discussion about how effective it's been, and we want to really move towards that. I guess my question is, besides all the discussion of how fast we're moving, are we really moving as quickly to getting more energy efficient buildings and building automation like we talk about, or are we really not getting there as quickly as we talk, or what's the reality about where we are right now?
I think there's two parts of that. One is existing buildings, which understanding their financial model doesn't really adopt change that quickly. But when you look at new construction, you do see a heavier influence on some of these smart technologies and energy efficiencies solely for sound financial reasons. You make more money from your tenants when you provide them the level of services that they expect, which is high energy efficiency, high quality of service for their tenants or their employees of the customer's tenants. And so I see new buildings are definitely coming along a lot faster than anything else in the marketplace.
So when we look at, like, when we're talking about contractors, what should they actually be thinking about, and how can they better position themselves in this smart cities market to be more effective and understand how they're going to play a critical role in how we're developing these smart cities?
Well, I think there's several areas of technology in the construction industry you need to focus on, especially in that design phase. And that is, what type of technologies make sense for that building. I'm going to give you a few examples. Like, I live in Texas, and we have a great grocery store chain here called H-E-B. And when you look at their mission, their purpose, which is providing food and access, and I've seen them lose power recently. It's changed their business model where they have not just backup generation, but they have real full off-grid capabilities around full generation. And so you see what technology supports that business's purpose. EVs are simple. Those are growing technologies. Solar is a growing technology to be able to provide some capacity off-grid. Things like light harvesting are growing, as well as window tinting and other technologies. So it depends if it's an office space to a retail space, but there's different technologies for different footprints.
So are you describing it as it should be more economic, or is it really more energy efficiency? Because you described kind of two things there, so it's kind of interesting the way you talked about it just now.
I have a view. I mean, we're all altruistic and want to be energy efficient, so don't get me wrong. But at the end of the day, a business makes financial decisions for their purpose. And the two actually meet today. I mean, buying solar, if you did it 10 years ago, was so unaffordable. There wasn't a great financial model unless you have a lot of credits. But today, it pays itself back. Window harvesting, newer technology, but pays itself back. So I think you take into account, does it have a financial value to your tenant or you as a construction company or a building owner? But it serves the efficiency and sustainability model. So I think they're hand in hand, but we make decisions based on our bottom line as a business today.
So where are we talking about the ROI overall? I mean, how do we justify that, and where do we find that ROI?
It's going to change based on square footage and use cases. We have a customer in a unique building space, Major League Baseball parks. And most of their ROIs tended to be less than 18 months and a greater number less than 12 months. So it really depends on the cost and the technology in your place and your market, if there are grants and refunds available to you. Texas is not necessarily a solar-friendly state compared to California, where you may have a quicker payback. So I think it's looking at it as whole. But when it comes down to what your business is, so pick us. We just built a brand new building. As a software vendor, having a building where developers and support personnel can sit is part of our core mission. So making sure that we have a high availability building. So we've put in technologies around window tinting. We have a framework for solar to go in, generation, as well as batteries, all so that we can maintain an environment for our core mission, which is to provide software to customers. and it all made sense from a construction and payback point of view for us.
So when you look at this, your advice to a construction company is really looking at what's the bottom line payback, is also what is the energy efficiency that they're going to actually provide to the environment. It seems like it's twofold that you're describing.
I think it is twofold, but I think it's from a customer point of view, we're a vendor to others, right? And what is something that our customers ask us? Are you energy efficiency? Do you have recycling programs? Do you have a sustainability officer? Those are things that even our vendors want to hold us accountable to. So it's important to our business as well to meet that demand. But I think from a construction point of view, it's a balance. I think as a construction company, you need to know your customer and the market they serve, and to find mutually agreeable solutions that bring apart that sustainable answer and provide value to both people, both companies.
Scott, I appreciate you spending time with us today. Scott Smith from OSIsoft, thank you so much for all your time.
Thank you very much. Appreciate it.
All right, well, that's all the time we have today, but stick around. We've got so much more to come right here on Construct Tech TV. I'm here right now with Scott Schwalbe, who is the CEO of NimbeLink. Scott, let's talk a little bit about the construction space. And you guys are really very good at talking about cellular asset tracking and how important that is for construction. Let's really discuss what's happening now and why contractors really need to be keeping track of all their assets, especially today, and how cellular tracking is becoming so vital to the industry.
Yeah, sure. As you know, in construction, you hear this a lot, time is money. So when contractors and in the job site, they start working on a project, and if an asset's not where it's supposed to be at the right time, and they have to go around looking for that particular asset, you basically lose that time that you're supposed to have to build the project out. And in construction especially, there's a ripple effect. So if something gets delayed one day, then the next project gets delayed another day. And so there's a lot of reasons for tracking assets in construction. And today is really interesting as technology is becoming more prevalent, easier to get, easier to deploy, costs are coming down. There's a lot of real good reasons to be thinking about putting asset tracking within your construction site.
Now, with you guys, when you talk about tracking assets, you guys are really talking about tracking the trailers, talking about the really important things that are inside those and wanting to know where those are. Why is that so important? Because I think right now, those kind of things are where you're losing a lot of money with what's inside of those at the job site.
Yeah, so what we're finding, talking to our customers, if you go to any particular job site, depending on the size of the construction, if it's a large industrial or even a small residential home, if you think about driving up and down your neighborhood and there's a construction site of a house, there might be 5 different subcontractors showing up at that house over a period of time with different trailers. They're showing up, the painters, the sheetrockers, the plumber, the electrician. And a lot of times they're there for 3, 4, 5 days. And if they don't get their job done in time, the next person can't come. And what we've learned in the space, and we're hearing from, there's times when they show up for work the next day and somebody broke into the trailer and stole the stuff out of the trailer. Or the trailer actually gets hooked up and disappears from the construction site.
People are just stealing whole trailers from a job site.
That's correct. And they're able to come in and they think they got it locked up with the hitch, and then they come in and cut the hitch and drive off with the trailer in the middle of the night. Because in some states you don't even have to register those trailers, so there's it's pretty loose as far as being able to track them the next day, and then they'll find the trailer maybe 2-3 days later, 5 miles away, completely empty.
This is crazy. You're describing that somebody's just coming up to these job sites, grabbing them and stealing them, and what are they doing? They're taking everything that's inside of them, and I mean, are they just selling them? What are they doing with the goods that are inside of them?
That's our understanding. They'll basically take the tools, they'll take the material, and they'll go off and sell it or use it on another construction site, or we don't really know what happens with the material at the time.
But that what you just described is that ripple effect. It can be so costly for a construction job site in delaying it, not only for the project, but in just the cost for the contractor that's trying to get the job done.
That's right. And, insurance will most likely pay for that lost material. Let's say it's a trailer full of windows and they were going to just put them in the next day. But the fact is those windows might have been special order and they might take 6 weeks to come or 4 weeks to come, or they have to go find that specific window. And so it definitely has a ripple. And so the other aspect outside of the trailers is actually the raw materials that are sitting on websites. People are stealing copper, they're stealing materials. So having some sort of indication or a tracker on the assets of the raw materials we're finding is becoming more and more prevalent also.
So it's really beneficial for the construction companies to understand that they're recouping a lot of their costs by having their assets tracked today, because they don't realize this until it's after the fact. If they didn't do it, then they go, why didn't I do this, is what you're saying right now, because it's becoming more and more common that these sites, that there's people coming and stealing their goods, that they really need to be looking at what's the cause and effect here sometimes.
Yes, for sure. And that's really the loss prevention part of it. But the other aspect is when you're a contractor and you might have 5 trailers and you think you know where they are, and you don't really know exactly where they are.
That's a common one we hear a lot about. They don't know where their trailers are.
Yeah, you've got a piece of equipment and it just happens to be somewhere else, and now they're searching for that and trying to get it where they need it to go. So that whole thinking ahead and planning on the logistics of the trailer is interesting. And maybe, I mentioned raw materials. One of the other interesting aspects that we're finding in the construction space is, especially if you're in a construction site and the next job requires for a very expensive beam or an expensive raw material coming in, and they expect it to be there at noon on Monday, and they hire cranes and they hire people and they're all sitting there waiting for this piece of raw material to show up. They need to know, and so there's a lot of tracking going on in the raw material stage to make sure that they know when that piece of material is coming in, so they're not spending a lot of time, money, and effort wasting equipment and people.
Scott, are these systems pretty easy to deploy?
They are, yeah. So that's one of the reasons we've really been focusing on cellular, because cellular can be autonomous. It does not have to be set up as a mesh network. It doesn't have to be set up within the site. It can be a standalone. So right now, and that's why I think the other area why today some of these technologies and easy to deploy weren't even available 2 years ago. So we're seeing a lot more in the space that can come in ready to go, slap on an asset, and turn it on and check the location. So a lot easier to deploy than they were in the past.
Scott from NimbeLink, thank you so much for being with us today. We wish you more continued success, and we appreciate all the time. And it's interesting to hear what's happening right now in asset tracking and cellular solutions. Thanks a lot.
All right, thank you.
Thanks for watching Construct Tech TV, where we are talking tech at the job site.